Have you ever wondered how Western medicine was adopted in Asia? Let's pause for a moment and think about it. Doesn't it seem a bit outlandish that Western medicine made it to Southeast Asia at all? With its own rich history of herbal medical practices, it seems almost impossible for any other medical school of thought to make it through. And yet, nowadays, both schools seem to be doing well in Southeast Asia. Today, we'll be looking at the history of Western medicine in South Korea in specific. What does Japan has to do with it? And how the Korean traditional medicine achieved the impossible. It survived the test of time. Let's first ask ourselves, what is Western medicine and what actually is Korean traditional medicine? To find the answer to my questions, I visited a traditional Korean medicine clinic located in the heart of Yangnyeong-si, a district in Seoul dedicated only to traditional medicine, to meet with Dr. An Tae-han, who is a traditional practitioner.
The biggest difference between Korean and Western is the starting point. The Korean medicine starts with the human. But the Western medicine start from the microscope. So they focus to the disease itself, but we focus on the people. We see the difference of the four organs type. So which is the more effects on that person. And so if the lung energy, we call 태양인. If the spleen, if the more energy in this person, we call 소음인. Why we divide it by time is the disease progresses by the body type.
I also had some questions about prescriptions called gunsin chonsa, which are a replacement of the Western pills.
근신자사? how do you know that? It's table of the recipe. Compare the Western pills, we boil the water that contains the many herbal medicines. Gun is the most important medicine to this person. Shin next. 좌, 사 is the help the 군신.
From our very long conversation, I learned that main differences between Korean and Western medicine is that the cure for the disease is tailored by Korean practitioners based on body type. Surgery is a Western medicine characteristic, whereas Korean counterparts focus on non-interventionist practices such as acupuncture, oxybustion, or cupping. Also, Korean prescriptions are written in the form of herbal combinations that are mixed and brewed, whereas Western medics use combination of ointments and pills. Imagine that it's the second half of the 19th century. South Korea is a hermit kingdom under the Joseon dynasty and Emperor Gojong. You're a fine middle-aged man, conservative and devoted to Confucianist values, currently living in Seoul. You're a member of a lower middle class, also called sangnim. You own a small herbal shop. Those are the golden years for the Korean traditional medicine. Not that long ago, in the early Joseon period, at the main trade crossroads, there were health facilities established that aimed to serve the poor. Those places, named Bojewon, made medicine available to everyone. Your little business is doing quite well, as its close location to Bojewon supplies you with new customers. But soon, your life is about to change. The neighboring Japanese economy is doing very well, so the Japanese government is seeking new markets to expand to. Also, to join the cool kids club of imperial powers, Japan needs to prove its strength by expanding its spheres of influence. Korea seems to be the answer. However, with its closed-door policy to foreign trade other than Chinese, at the time, it means that before exploiting this market, Japan will need to develop a strategy to open Korean market to foreign trade and end the Chinese protectorate. It was 1875 when the Japanese military decided to send a gunboat on what they called a coastline patrol, close to the island Ganghwa, which is about 80 kilometers away from Seoul. The Korean army opened fire first, as they felt threatened. With those first shots, your life was about to change. As a result of the incidents, your beloved Joseon dynasty was forced to sign the Treaty of Ganghwa. Let's take a closer look at the treaty and see why it was so impactful on your future. The article first stated that from now on, Korea was a free nation just like Japan and should enjoy the same freedoms. This article basically meant that the ties were broken with China permanently, and foreign powers were now able to trade with Korea. Another really interesting article is the Article 7 that permitted any Japanese mariner to patrol the Korean peninsula. From now on, Korea was being watched carefully by Japan. So one might ask himself, how did China agree to all of this happening? The answer is fairly complicated. The United States, just like Japan, wanted to expand to a newly open market and persuaded the Chinese officials that they will not be engaged in opium trade, so much feared in China at the time, in exchange for an accord to not intervene in the process of signing the Ganghwa Treaty. Opening doors to foreign trade meant that hard times were coming for your business. Your life became even harder when in 1910 Japan occupied Korea. Before 1910, more Western countries began to exchange goods with Korea, but a real hardship came after 1910 when Japan began to eradicate any artifacts and practices associated with Korean cultural heritage. By this time, you had to sell herbs, provide acupuncture, oxybustion, and cupping treatments in secret. As part of cultural eradication programs, Korean medical practitioners were sent to Japan on field trips called gentlemen's sightseeing groups, which were nothing else than retraining programs during which Korean medics observed how things are done the Western way. So, while preparing myself for this podcast and sweeping through Yonsei University database, I came across a very peculiar set of photographs. I saw photos of medical lecturers at the College of Dentistry in old-fashioned white gowns with Western facial features. What pulled my attention was the date at which the photographs were taken at. They were all taken after 1910. As I later found out, as parts of the cultural eradication programs, Japan built new hospitals and hired Western practitioners who were mostly Christian missionaries on the mission to civilize the Far East. I realized that it was a joint venture. Introduction of Western medicine to Korea was not only an effort to eradicate and find a replacement for Korean practice, but an international imperial corporation with a mission to civilize the Far East. The Japanese and missionary joint efforts brings us to even more fascinating question. How on earth Korean traditional medicine persisted through and flourished after the Japanese occupation? The time after Japanese occupation was not an easy one either. First, the US military government ruled for 3 years. Then, the Korean War took place, resulting in an infamous split of Korea, resulting in a massive exodus and emergence of Korean diasporas abroad. Around 1980s, when Korean economy began to recover from South Korea, more and more people were trained for Western medical practitioners and started opening their own clinics. With the rise of medical entrepreneurship, the price of services became unaffordable for less affluent members of the society. For the first time in few decades, South Koreans began to reach for the wisdom from the past. It was a time for a great comeback of the traditional practitioners. With time, Korean government began to appreciate the traditional knowledge and support its development alongside its Western counterpart. As of today, I'm standing in the middle of Yangnyeong-si Market, a district in Seoul dedicated solely to traditional medicine. What was once a forbidden practice now is an industry employing almost 5,000 people in Seoul. Because of generations of traditional practitioners serving the society undercover and their knowledge being a well-kept secret that persisted the test of time, I'm able to walk into herbal shops full of treasures, strange to me at first, such as antlers in slices, dead mice juice, or dried seahorses, all very good for skin. It was the Japanese occupation that paved the way for Western medicine adoption in South Korea. But with time, it became a joint venture of Christian missionaries and Japanese imperial thirst that resulted in an implementation of Western practices in South Korea. However, it was the medical entrepreneurship introduced by the very same Japanese and Western practitioners that made it possible for the Korean traditional medicine to return at its best.